Welcome to the Hash It Out Show. I am your host, Jared Boyd, also known as JB, your sports guy. We have a fantastic show for you all tonight. Glad for you guys to tune in. I'm joined by my co-host. You can catch him on CrescentCitySports.com, the one, the only George Peppers. What's up, George Peppers?
What's up, Jared? I'm doing all right, sir. I'm really looking forward to tonight. I have a very special guest, an icon of sorts in the New Orleans area. So I'm really looking forward to this.
So am I. Our special guest, like George says, he's a legend. He's an icon. He's been a sports reporter for years. You can hear his voice on the original prep report on Nash 106.1 during the high school football season. He's also the owner of CrescentCitySports.com. We have the one, the only Mr. Ken Trahan. Mr. Trahan, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, JB. Great to be with you guys.
Oh, we are so happy to have you here. Before we get into these high school football teams, I want to ask you, you was a sports reporter for years, worked with the Saints and Zephyrs, but what was it that made you want to start CrescentCitySports.com?
Yeah, I'd like to take credit for it, but I don't deserve any of it. I got approached by two gentlemen, Bill Hammock and Don Jones, who really saw the future in this industry back in 2007, wanted to start a sports website that incorporated audio, visual, and print. And they foresaw what was transpiring with the newspaper business. They were absolutely correct. And then, of course, wanted to marry these elements. And, of course, based on where I had been and what I had done, they somehow arrived at me and thought that I would be the guy. I was humbled, flattered by it. I initially resisted. I was running a radio station, running the Saints Hall of Fame, doing games and everything else. But they were very persuasive. And, man, I thank them for doing it, because once they persuaded me, we got into this, it's just been a tremendous blessing. I mean, we've built this thing to well over 11 million viewers a year, and it's a 24/7 labor of love with some terrific contributors, and we're just very, very fortunate. So that's really how it happened. It wasn't my vision. Now, what you see on a day-to-day basis is pretty much what I envision and what I plan, and being in charge of it, and incorporating all the people that we have, and doling out assignments and so forth. But to have seen where it came from and where it's at today, it's humbling. It really is, but I'm very, very blessed.
Let's get into this high school football teams. Football is right around the corner. I want to start with District 9-5A, and I want to talk about the John Curtis Patriots first. They bring back a bunch of talent. Dagan Bruno at quarterback, Jason Gabriel running back, and they have Michael Turner. What's the outlook, in your opinion, for John Curtis? Can they win the Catholic League this year and also get back to the state championship game?
Yes and yes. I think, when you look at the talent on hand, it's extremely good. And when you combine that with good coaching and the motivation that's going to be there this year, with a record, of course, in hand, basically with 7 wins to become the all-time winningest coach in the history of the United States, I think those things will all serve in positive fashion. Now, the flip side of that would be feeling pressure and the kids, but JT's handled that extremely well with the approach to it. He's been realistic about it. I've written about it, talked about it, had him on my radio shows and such. And I think he's handled it well, to the point where he doesn't allow the players to get caught up in all of these things. And I think he's the perfect guy for it. So, look, they're really good. You mentioned Dagan Bruno. He's really, really good player. He's a good thrower. Aside from being a good runner, they've got a host of running backs. It's not just one. They've got 3 or 4 that are, one's equally as good as the other. You mentioned Turner on the outside. He's got a running mate that's just as good. And, their defense is largely back. They got 4 offensive linemen back. So, yeah, they're really good. We tend to forget they got humbled by Carr last year in the regular season. And I really think that really propelled them. I think it changed the dynamic of their season. Look, when they went on the road to Baton Rouge and beat Catholic, that pretty much told you who they were. Catholic is all that, and they had a tremendous amount of talent. And of course, they really had an easy time in the championship game with Brother Martin. So no, I think they're in a great position to repeat with the talent on hand. Of course, they've got to do it in a really good league with at least 2 or 3 other teams that have a chance to win it all as well.
You mentioned the Edna Carr Cougars.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it feels strange that Edna Carr has not been in a state championship game since 2020. and they're loaded with talent every year. They don't rebuild; they just reload. What is it about the Edna Cougars this season that can make them special and go on a big run and maybe get back to that state championship game?
Well, I just think that, first of all, it's a superior program. You don't do what they did unless you have all the elements in place, and they do. Bryce Brown is a friend of mine. I was, of course, a fairly, I don't want to use significant, but I was part of his documentary.
Looks like we lost Ken for a second. Like we lost Ken. Hopefully we can get Mr. Trahan back in a second. We lost his video and audio. We can get him back. George Peppers, you there?
I'm here. I'm here. I'm looking. Hopefully, we can get him back.
Get him back.
Man, this is not good.
It's okay. We'll get him back. We'll get him back.
Oh, we're good. We'll be fine.
We'll get him back.
But as you can hear, he eloquently describes, the two premier programs with Curtis and Carr. And look, we've debated this amongst ourselves. I've told you I believe John Curtis is the goods going into this year, and I believe they're in a prime position to repeat. They have the perfect schedule. I say perfect. Tough district, enough of a test out of district. Oh, no, we lost you?
I'm here.
Okay.
Ahead, I'm here.
I just lost your video. They get Zachary in week 2. They get a Kitiana in week 7. Those are two prime opponents, championship caliber opponents that you get. And JT's not afraid to test himself. Never has been in his years of coaching. He's want to know what kind of team he's got. I look at that team and I just feel like they're there. Uh-oh. There we go. Are we back?
Ken, are you back? Don't have Ken.
I saw his sign.
I saw his sign too. Just be patient. We working on getting Ken back with us. Working on getting.
Gotta love Wi-Fi, baby.
All right.
Gotta love Wi-Fi.
He's gonna be back with us. I promise you.
We'll get him.
Ken Trahan will be back. Go ahead, George.
I think the question that has to be asked, and whether it be me or you,
all right, we got him back.
Which league is the better league? Oh, we're good. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
there he is.
Lost you momentarily there, but that's okay. But go ahead. I know
we're good.
And the car still. You talked about Bryce Brown being a good friend of yours in the documentary.
Yeah, listen, I just think that what they do is so consistent. Their preparation, their coaching, it's outstanding. When you talk to opposing coaches, you get the notion about what other people are, because they'll give you sometimes a better indication as to the programs themselves. So I think when you take a look at what Carr has done consistently, it's been because they've been consistent. Their approach is consistent. Off the field stuff, and we talked about all that in the documentary. It was incredibly revealing, and it's educational. And I think the education part of it's really important for people to understand, because if we understand each other and where we come from, there's a greater sense that people are going to find a way to get along and love each other. And I think a lot of that came out of this. I was already very friendly with Bryce and very friendly with Taurus and the whole program, but I gained immeasurable respect for who they are and what they do. And I know the vice versa is true as well. And we talk frequently. But what they do extremely well. They're not incredibly complicated schematically. They just do the things they do very well. Everybody wants to talk about the smoke and mirrors coming out on the field, and that's all great. But once they get on the field, they're as disciplined as anybody. And that's why they beat people. And had A.J. Samuel been healthy last year, maybe the outcome of the Catholic game would have been different. Maybe not. Catholic's really good, but it's a shame he wasn't 100%. But look, they're going to be there again. It's just going to be strange watching a Carr team that doesn't have Samuel taking snaps. It seems like he's been there, I don't know, for about 10 years or something like that. So, but they'll be really good again.
What about the Brother Martin Crusaders? Got to the Dome last year, lost to John Curtis. They lose Torrey Lambert at running back. What can you say about them?
Well, I think I wouldn't call it a rebuilding year. It's never going to be that at Brother Martin, because they're a good program. But, they have a quarterback that started 7 or 8 games last year. Their running backs are pretty solid. Jordan West is a good player. Their offensive line's real good. So I think what you're going to see there is they're just going to run the football and not put any pressure on the passing game. They had a terrific defensive line last year. They basically had to replace pretty much all those guys, but John Norris does a great job with those guys on that side of the ball. Look, they'll be good, and they have a great coach in Mark Bonis. But, look, if I'm looking at that league right now, it's pretty funny when you're talking about Rummel and Brother Martin and Jesuit being the second tier. But I think that's kind of how you perceive it this year, although it wouldn't shock me at all if any one of those three teams breaks through and becomes a top 2 team.
Before I pass it on to George Peppers, a lot of talk about this St. Aug team this year with the talent they're having that they have for this team. But St. Aug hasn't been to a state championship game since 1979. What can you say about the Purple Knights?
Well, I can tell you that I'll show my age because I did the 1978 and the 1979 state championship games. I did the 78 game. I was part of that broadcast when they beat Jesuit in the Dome 13-7. And then Otis and the school got me to come do the game in New Iberia in 1979 when they won the state championship then. And loved Otis Washington. He was a friend for life, and being at his memorial service and sharing some words with some people was special. But from the standpoint of where St. Aug is right now, Nick Foster's gotten a lot of mileage out of players that he had. And of course, he's gotten kids that have come in that were augmenting the program that came from other programs as well. He's got a good quarterback. He's got size. I don't know how they can be as talented as they were last year because they had an enormous amount of talent last year. Last year was interesting because they were the team that beat Zachary, but they were also the team that got blown out by Carr and let a lead get away against Curtis. So I think it's a matter of learning how to win. I think the talent is clearly there. They're going to beat the teams they're better than because they're better than them. But the ones that are on their level or close to it, if not slightly better, they have to learn to win those games. I think they can. And I think another year down the road with Nick, who is, of course, a disciple of Bryce Brown and came from the Carr program, which is why he's there, because they initially tried to hire Bryce and couldn't quite get him. It was a smart move on the part of Barrett Ray at the time. But they got Nick, and Nick's done a great job. Look, they're going to be – that's one of the teams in that upper tier. I think John Curtis, Carr, and St. Augustine probably are in the upper tier. Again, the other one that's a dark horse is Holy Cross. They've got tremendous skill. Their wide receivers are second to none. Both of them are terrific players. They've got a running back situation with quickness and speed, 2 kids at return, a quarterback that's a 3-year starter. So they're going to be good on offense. It's going to be a matter of how good they are up front. But, yeah, the thing about that league is nobody's below average. They're all good programs. I mean, we didn't mention Rummel, and Rummel's a good program. It's good. Won a playoff game last year. That's a bad year for them, but they're still good. And then, of course, Jesuit was in the state championship game just 2 years ago, and they played maybe the toughest schedule in the state. So, and Ryan Manelli does an excellent job. Yeah, that's just a great league. I mean, it's fun to watch those games every single week.
George Peppers.
Ken, first of all, thank you for taking the time to join us. And, we're talking about the Catholic League. If you had your druthers, there's 2 leagues in the state that are loaded. The Catholic League is one, and the Lafayette League with St. Thomas More, Westgate, Acadiana, and those teams. If you had your druthers, which league do you think is the more superior league, if there is? If that question is, I know it's a subjective question, but which league do you feel is superior?
I think it's year to year. I just think it depends on the year. I think 9-5A this year, it'd be hard to think that anybody's better than that league when you look at the top to bottom. I just mentioned 7 teams. Show me one of those 7 teams that isn't good. And look, what you talked about, that's a tremendous league, obviously. And, of course, John Curtis will play Acadiana again this year. They beat him last year. They'll play him again this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, I would say at least this year, I'd probably say 9-5A, but 3-5A is a terrific league. And I have enormous respect for those programs. Of course, I deal with a lot of those guys and have for many, many years, and done previews on some of them already at CrescentCitySports.com. So, no, I think those are the 2 best 5A leagues to be certain.
Okay, well, let's shift our gears to the West Bank, and let's go to the Archbishop Shaw Eagles. They had a pretty good year last year to the playoffs, won a playoff game. Hank Tierney's first year back. What are you expecting from Shaw this year going? And the district looks pretty winnable. Bell Chase is in there, but what are you expecting from the Eagles this year?
expect them to win. they're good.
Cool.
They're extremely well coached. They've got it going. I talked to Hank yesterday. I'm going to be writing a preview on them tomorrow at Crescent City Sports. And look, they graduate Williams, they graduate Kensey. Those guys are really good, but they might be better. They've got 3 transfers that have come in, all of whom are West Bank young men from other programs that are really good players to augment what they have. And the other thing about it is with the connections that Coach has and all of his prominent former players, some of them that on a national level, like Ryan Clark, they're all helping the program now, and they're helping them with players. And I think what you're going to see now moving forward is, I don't want to use the word lockdown, but you're going to see a large wall built now between the West Bank and name all those schools we just talked about: John Curtis, Archbishop Rummel, Brother Martin, De La Salle. All of those schools are Jesuit. Have been getting kids from the West Bank, and quite a few good ones for several years now. And I don't think you're going to see much of that moving forward. I think that's where Hank was not only the right hire, but I think with all the connections, the knowledge he has, and the love that goes into that program with him being back there is going to make that a really good school. Look, they played St. Charles Catholic early in the season last year. We did the game. They got drilled. I would watch that game early this season. I think that'll be fun to watch because I think they're going to be a lot more competitive this time around. But I expect they'll win their league. I expect that looking at their class, I think they'll at least be a regional team, but I think they're more of a quarterfinal team already. I think that's a program he's building.
Interesting observation. Let's talk about the John Aaron Patriots, who had a rough go of it in pre-district last year, getting crushed in every game that they played, and then having won the district, and then heartbreaking loss to Rummel in the first round. My alma mater lost to your alma mater, so that's kind of a tough deal there. But they graduate Royal Falco. They still have Wardell Mack. What are you looking at from the Patriots? I would imagine they're the favorites in 8-5A, but what do you see from the Patriots this year?
Well, I think it's the same as always. They're the favorite, and Chalmette's the next choice. I mean, I think it's pretty similar to what we've seen, the dynamic that's been in place for quite some time until somebody else proves otherwise. And no other program has stepped up. We'll see what transpires in a few of these programs. Now, Brian Glover's gone to East Jefferson, and I like Brian. He's a really good man, and he was in an impossible situation at Grace King. He's got something to work with now, and I think he'll do a great job at East Jefferson. But I think in West Jefferson, you just had too much of a revolving door there. I mean, you've gone through coach after coach after coach. And by the way, the guys they've had weren't half bad. Last time I checked, Cyril Crutchfield won 3 state championships elsewhere. Really fine coach and really fine man. They keep moving on, and I think that program needs stability. So I wouldn't put them there yet, but it can be that program. But I think it's John Ehret, and I think it's Chalmette. And look, I think Ehret playing that schedule early benefited them. They nearly beat Rummel. Now, this was an average Rummel team, but they had a great chance to win that game because they'd been in tough against similar, if not better, programs early in the season. So, look, scheduling is very important. It's especially important, with all due respect, when you're in a weak league because the PowerPoints are going to kill you. And I think that Reggie Rogers understands that, and I think that's why they schedule the way they do.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another team that had a really good year last year, but got humbled a bit in their playoff defeat. And that's the De La Salle Cavaliers. I know they graduate talent, but they still bring back the stud line defensive player in Richardson. What are you looking at from De La Salle this forthcoming season? It should be another district championship, but further on, what are you looking at from the Cavs?
Well, they've got a great defense. I mean, you start there. Their defense is going to be as good as any that you're going to find anywhere in the metro area. So there's that. Their quarterback, Arsenault, is a really good player. He's 6'2", and he's good. And that's going to benefit them because he can run and throw the football. Now, what they've had last year, they had the biggest, most physical offensive line I saw, bar none, last year. The best, the biggest, the most physical. They graduated, for those guys, but they're still going to be pretty solid up front. And the other thing they've had for all these years, I mean, going back 9-10 years with Brian Manali and Emma Graham Jarrett, is they've always had an absolute stud at running back. And we'll see if they fill that hole because, again, when you graduate the guys they graduated over the last 4 years, all of whom are playing at the next level, you're going to have a hard time replacing them. But they're good. The answer is they're going to win their league. Last year, look, we did their playoff game at Lafayette Christian. They scored, 45 49 points, and they got beat
Yeah,
by
about
20
70,
something.
I think.
So, I mean, because Lafayette Christian's offense was just incredible, and they frankly should have won it. They blew it really in the dome in the last 2 minutes. But no, this is a really good De La Salle team. Look, you can pencil them in to be at least a quarterfinal team again. They're that good.
Okay. Um, you talked about your Rummel Raiders in the Catholic League. I mean, last year it seemed like not kind of a average year for them. What do you think of Nick Monica's group coming into this year? Is this a team that can take a step forward, even though you got Curtis, Ogg, and Carr in that district?
Yeah, I think it can, but I just think the league's too tough. I think, their defensive line was extremely young last year and slightly undersized. Well, they're a year older and they're all back, so they'll be better. But they suffered, a big blow when they lost their best player in the secondary, who tore his knee in basketball. Who's committed to Stanford, and that certainly hurt them. But they've got two other really good players in the secondary. Offensive line will be pretty good. They've got both running backs back, and they're both good players. Their issue is going to be who's the quarterback. Right now it's either Berg or Buggage. Buggage has been there throughout the offseason. Berg is not, because he's an outstanding baseball player. He's already committed to Tulane as a sophomore, but he's a good athlete. He's 6'1", and they like him. So they got to make a decision there. You start there. You got to have a quarterback. They had Avrard last year. He's at Southeastern now. So the answer is I think they'll be pretty good. They might be slightly better, but the most important position on the team, they don't have any experience at a quarterback.
No doubt about it. Is there a team lying in the weeds that you think could be a surprise team that can maybe make a gargantuan leap? If there's that team, who is it and why?
Well, I think in that league it's Holy Cross, as I mentioned before, because they've got all the skill. They can match up with anybody in the state. When you 7-on-7 doesn't mean anything. People blow that out of proportion. It's not football. It's just a skeleton drill. But you can see athletic ability. And when you see the young men they have at skill positions, they're second to none in that regard. So I'd keep an eye on them. They got a first-year coach in Scott Watney, who's an alumnus and has had success previously at Archbishop Hannon, coached at Catholic New Iberia most recently. So I think they'd be one that you'd take a look at. When you look at the other classifications, I wouldn't say St. Martin's would be a surprise. They were a semifinal team last year, but everybody knows about Harlan Berry, but they're pretty good. Frank Gendusa did a great job of building that program, and Kevin Dizer is taking over now, and they won't miss a beat with Kevin. And they've got 4 or 5 really good players. It's a matter of staying healthy because they don't have a whole lot of depth. I'd say Riverside is kind of the same way. Lee Roussel did a great job in his first year there last year as a college coach. He's been very successful on a high school level with the programs he was at, with Rummel winning a couple of state championships, Lutcher, and everywhere he's been. I think they're another program that would certainly bear watching at a lower level. In terms of New Orleans, John F. Kennedy, I think Linares Elpage has done a tremendous job there. His team last year how many people noticed? And I did, and we wrote about it and talked to Linares frequently. But I really like what he's done with that program. And, I love the fact that they brought back the name, because they had such a legacy that they let get away, with all due respect to Lake Erie and New Tech. When they went back to the name and went back to the colors, I think that just brought a lot of people back, much like Booker T. Washington. I think it's a similar dynamic. The Kip thing's great, but it's Booker T. Washington, and you have such an incredible legacy. And Wayne Reese Jr. embraced that more than anybody because of his dad, my dear friend, who, of course, was there back in the 70s before he went to Carver. So, yeah, I think those are some programs that you would watch. I think Kenner Discovery is a growing program that's going to be good in the future. They've got good numbers there. I like what they've done. I mentioned JFK. I think the others I mentioned are certainly worth watching. And I'm sure I'm skipping over 1 or 2 that are probably in that realm also. I'm going to be interested to see how Lutcher does just outside of our area, but we count him in our area, not having DeWanye Winfield, because he was incredible and the largest reason they got there in a class that frankly was winnable. So I'm watching that too. And Levante Davis has done a good job at St. James, and they're always a factor too. So look, I think any one of those teams you could see breakthrough. There's some teams in Livingston and Washington that I'd watch. In terms of the North Shore teams, the 6-5A league is, I don't know. I mean, it's so balanced. It's hard to find one that you can say would break out of the pack. But Slidell won it last year, and they've got virtually everybody back on defense. And Malta Scobell does a really good job there. So I'd give them a slight edge in that league. But Bobby Sanders has done a great job at North Shore in 2 years in a program that never won. And they've won 2 straight years and won a playoff game for the first time in like 35 years. So I think he's done a great job. St. Paul's will always be in the mix in that league as well. Mandeville's solid, and Craig Jones is a good coach. So that's a balanced league. I don't know that there's one real contender, coming out of that particular league when you're talking about statewide. But certainly I think that's a good league with a bunch of teams that will be very, very competitive with each other.
My last question: is John Curtis the best team in New Orleans? They are the favorites coming into the Catholic League, but we've mentioned extolled about Ed the Car. What about where are they in this argument with Fred Robinson, a dynamic player? What about the Warren Easton Eagles? Let's talk about them before we continue.
Well, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves and what they've been able to do on an annual basis under Jerry Phillips. And you mentioned Robinson. He's as quick and as fast as anybody you'll see anywhere this year. He's that. It was a disappointing loss last year in the playoffs because they had him at home. It's a team, frankly, that wasn't as good as it's been. And I saw Brother Martin take Karen Crow apart the following week. And this wasn't a great Brother Martin team. It was a good Brother Martin team. Lost 4 or 5 games. So that was disappointing because I thought Warren Easton was set up in good shape to make a deep run. Now, playing 5A is a different animal. And you talked about Carr earlier, and that's the same thing with Carr. You say, well, Carr hadn't been in the finals the last couple of years. Well, they're now playing at the highest level, so it's not as easy to do that, as John Curtis found out, and they won it last year. That was only the second time they've won it since they moved up, back in 2014. So competition's better. Warren Easton's good. I mean, Jerry's team is good. They're good again. They'll be there. Look, again, it's all about when you get to the playoffs, 2 things. You got to be healthy and you got to get the right draw. And I take nothing away from what Brother Martin did last year. I did their regional game, their quarterfinal, and their semifinal and their final game last year. And they got hot at the right time, but they also got a good draw. And that's so important. On the other side of the bracket,
Yep.
I mean, frankly, I think you had the 3 best teams. You had Curtis, Carr, and Catholic, all on one side of the bracket, and only one could emerge. So you got to get lucky with regard to health, and you got to get lucky with regard to draw. That is so important.
Mr.
Absolutely,
Trahan,
I couldn't agree with you. I was going to say I couldn't agree with you more. But before I turn it back to Jared, my last question, it's about John Curtis. Let's have a little fun. When will the record be broken? I've seen the schedule. They get Zachary in week 2. They get Acadiana on week 7. 2 very high-profile non-district games. They have another one against a Florida school that I've honestly, quite honestly, have never heard of. When is the record happening? You need 6 to tie, I think, and 7 to break.
Yeah, 6 to tie, 7 to win. So they play tough opponents. But based on who they are and the talent they have, I would say week 7 or 8. I think they'll be 6-0 or 7-0 or 6-1. So I'm thinking you're looking at week 8, and we are too for our website because we want to do the game. But that said, you gotta make your best guess, right? So I'm egging him on already. Like, hey, dude, you got to win this game. You got to win that game.
Exactly.
Sure we're able to get this done, right? So yeah, look, I would say that they'll the most. Look, their schedule's so tough they could lose a couple of games. I don't think that's going to happen, and health has a lot to do with it. But I don't want to say surprised. I would be, let's just say I would not be surprised if they lost a game during the regular season because their schedule is so tough. I mean, everybody wants to beat them, obviously. So, and when you're playing those teams in that league, not to mention the ones you mentioned outside of the league with Zachary and Acadiana in particular, I mean, it's every week. You got to answer the bell. You got to be ready.
Mr. Trahan, you spoke about Warren Easton. Can McDonough 35 or George Washington Carver in District 11-4A give Warren Easton a run for their money?
Yeah, I think in a given year, the answer is yes. It's hard with the accumulation and the numbers that Warren Easton has for the other 2 you mentioned to get there. And when Wayne was still alive in 2019, Wayne Reese Sr., McDonough 35, got to the semifinals. And we had their game with Jennings on Crescent City Sports. And it's one of the largest audiences we've ever had. And that same night, Catholic and Rummel were playing for a state championship at Yeoman Stadium. And, of course, we were there doing that one on radio, and we were doing the McDonald 35 Jennings games on the website on Crescent City Sports. So we're sitting at Yeoman doing the game with my eye fixed on a computer, watching that game and pulling incredibly hard for McDonald 35. If anybody ever deserved to get to the championship game and to the Dome, and of course to win one, it was Wayne Reese, with everything that he accomplished in all of his years. And it was so disappointing when he didn't get there. And who would have known that, a year later he's gone from this earth. And it was, and I spoke at his memorial service, and it was both humbling and touching, and I love the family. But 35 is still solid. They don't have the numbers that they did. Frank Daggs was the obvious successor. He was Wayne's right-hand man. He's a terrific person and a friend. And I think he's a little better this year. I think they closed the gap some. I don't think they're there yet. Carver, has been competitive, in a given year with Warren Easton and with Carr. And again, Byron Addison's, you got stability there. You have stability in the program. There's a major project going on right now, the Ninth Ward project to finally build a facility there, which I've been part of, and to see it come to fruition is going to make a huge difference for the Ninth Ward, but also at that school and in the community. Byron's done a really good job. I certainly think his team is going to be pretty good this year. I wouldn't put them in the same category as Warren Easton, not right now.
I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
I want to go to District 9-2A. You have Fisher, Homer Christian, first year in this district. Jefferson Rise Charter, South Plaquemines, Thomas Jefferson, Walter Cohen.
Yeah.
I want to speak of South Plaquemines, who's coached by Lyle Feet. What type of year are you expecting from South Plaquemines?
I think they'll be pretty good. I mean, I've talked to Lyle, and look, let's be honest, more than anything else, it's about who you're playing. And it's a league that he absolutely can win. And I say that with all due respect, because none of these schools have proven to be, good football programs for a while now for any consistent period of time. Now, Jefferson Rise is a new school and a new program. And Fisher got demolished. Evan Cajuns' program got in his school, and community got wiped out by Ida. And they've been at John Ehret, for such a long period of time. But Tevin's a great guy. And it took the right man to be part of that program. And Kenny Bush has done a good job at Thomas Jefferson. Look, it's an academic school, much like Patrick Taylor. And they don't get a lot of great athletes at those institutions. Cohen, it's been all about numbers and the challenge to be able to get the people you want for Durrell and everybody there to have enough numbers to be able to go out and compete. What happens is with programs like that, they start the season with, 25 to 35, but then by midseason, they're down to 20 or so, and it's just hard to compete. And that's what makes it difficult. So I think South Plaquemines in a great place because of the numbers that they have, the stability in the program, and, the history as well. It's not what it was when Cyril was there, but it's still pretty good. And I think it's always a telltale indicator to see how they fare against Belle Chase in the Battle of Plaquemine Parish beginning of the season, because if they're competitive with the 4A school, then they're going to be good. And I think they will be. So if you're asking me right now, I'd pick the Hurricanes to win that league.
District 10-2A. St. Charles Catholic, defending state champions. Isidore Newman, Arch Manning is now gone. Eli Friend is now the quarterback. Joe Riley, the head coach of ML King Charter, he's doing a wonderful job with that program. So is Christopher Cheddar at Country Day. Is it possible any one of these teams can dethrone St. Charles Catholic as a district champions?
Oh, it's possible, but I wouldn't pick anybody to do it. I just think that the job Wayne Stein does is off the charts. They are so well coached. Of course, Frank Monica was phenomenal and handed the reins over to Wayne, but they're so aggravating to play against because they don't turn the ball over. They play great defense, and their kicking game, their special teams are the best I've seen year in and year out. They win games in the kicking game. And, when you're solid in all three phases, it's hard to beat a team like that. Newman is still going to be good. They've got good players across the board. And the other thing about it is I think it's going to benefit them to have that bright spotlight off of the program because they had to deal with that. And frankly, I can tell you it was a distraction with it's not just all the local attention, but the national attention that they got. And look, the history of the program is such that they've never even been to a state championship game ever. And yet people would talk about them like there's some sort of great dynasty or whatever, and the expectations were incredibly ridiculous and unfair. Nelson Stewart does a great job. And I think because you won't have, I mean, look, you had a guy that was brought in specifically to coach last year. He's now with the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton. You know, you had a quarterback that everybody in the country was watching, and he's got that talent. He's real good, but, you know, look, it's all about what's around you, too. They had nice players, but didn't have great athletes. So when they would face people that had those kind of players, they've not been able to get over the hump against them. But they'll be good this year. I think Eli Friend's a solid player. They're going to run the football well. They're good up front. If you look at their team up front, they look like a 5A team, and they can match up with those schools. They played De La Salle in the regular season this year, which I think is a really intriguing matchup. They can walk to each other's school to play, and De La Salle's really good, and they're a bigger classification team. I'm really looking forward to seeing that game. But I would certainly give St. Charles Catholic the nod. You mentioned the other two programs. Joe Riley's done an excellent job with the Jaguars. He's a good coach, and they slowly but surely get better every year. Kind of like I mentioned, Kenner Discovery and Jefferson Parish, similar dynamic. It's a school that gets slowly better each and every year and is well coached. And Country Day is always going to be competitive. You know, with Country Day, it's always about numbers. And again, if they can avoid injuries, they've got 4 or 5 frontline players that can match up with anybody. So they'll be competitive. And Chris Jett is a fine coach. Troy Baglio's there now coaching, and he's a terrific coach as well. So, look, that's a good league. I mean, those are good teams.
George Peppers, do you have any last questions for Mr. Ken Trahan?
I do. Talk about what we got upcoming this upcoming season, Ken, with the original. I think it's in its 29th year now.
Yeah, don't.
And just talk. What's that?
I said, don't remind me.
That's it. Yeah, I know. Tongue in cheek, firmly in cheek. Talk about and also game schedules and whatnot. Broadcasting games on Nash and through the website. Give us a little preview of what to look for this upcoming prep season.
Well, I'm already tired thinking about it, but we do 6 hours every Friday night. So, 5 hours live ourselves, and then we carry Friday Night Football from 11 to midnight from WGNO live on the radio as well to cap off the night. So it's a massive undertaking. I've got Ro Brown back with me this year co-hosting, and Les East and Jude Young will be out at Francesca's, and we'll have a school night every Friday night leading into the show at 7. We have reporters at 45 to 50 games a week from all over the state. It's a massive undertaking. We have 7 other stations that carry all a part of the show, and the planning is insane. We will do a bunch of games on radio, but we do games 1 or 2 a week on CrescentCitySports.com. We've already scheduled and penciled in quite a few of those, and we're looking forward to it. We have really good people involved in doing that, from Lenny Van Gilder to Wade Kaiser to VK Jones and Roe and myself and everybody else that's involved in that. It's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but we wouldn't do it if we didn't love it. So, and we tie in the radio show to the website. On a Friday night, Crescent City Sports, our scoreboard, which we were the first to do it years ago under a different iteration, we now average on Friday nights, and I stress average on Friday nights, in the vicinity of 32,000 visits on our scoreboard. Average. Some weeks it's higher than that, some weeks slightly lower, but it's humbling to know how many people depend on us and come to us for that, because we've got a great staff, including your brother Emmanuel, that does a fantastic job of updating the scores every minute from every game in the state. There's always a couple of stragglers where it's hard to find in the middle of nowhere and trying to get a contact or getting through on the phone and everything else, but that's a challenge. We embrace it. We enjoy it. We wouldn't do it if we didn't, and that's all about what's coming up. We're looking forward to it and wrapping it up, of course, in the Dome in the second week of December. So it's always a lot of fun. It's a challenge, but we embrace it, as I mentioned, and we're always looking forward to it.
One of our viewers is asking, how can they get a live stream schedule off of CrescentCitySports.com? Yeah, we pick the games ourselves, and we do it based upon what people don't understand sometimes is, number one, it's based on facilities. You got to have a facility that can accommodate you. You're talking about a producer. You're talking about computers. You're talking about mixers. You're talking about camera people. You're talking about a lot of things that you have to have the proper facility in place. I mean, a case in point, if you want to look at proper facilities, Tag Gormley is great. There's a ton of space.
The Jefferson Parish stadiums are fine, Joe Yenny and Haas Memphis. Then you get into others, and they can be a challenge. Some of the campus stadiums are good. Joe Brown's good. That's no problem there at all. But then you get into Pan American's a perfect example. We've done a few things there, but it's challenging. Berman's a challenge. And last time I did a semifinal game there, I did it outside because of two things, not just the press box where coaches are in front of you, but also the fact that you have no cell tower anywhere near there. So reception is a real issue there. So there's the answer to the question is it's multifaceted, and we spread the wealth to the best of our ability. But at the end of the day, we're looking for an audience. So we're going to pick the highest profile game that we can get that fits the facility that schools will say yes to, because not everybody says yes. And some schools stream their own, and we're not going to interfere with that because we're here for the schools, and we always will be. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it always comes down to availability, facility, and the best game possible, because at the end of the day, we're an advertiser-driven website. And one of the things I've stood up for and always will stand up for is we don't charge people to watch our games. I don't believe in that on the high school level. Those that do, all power to them. But I just think that high school students, relatives, friends, parents, alumni that live in New York or Washington State or even in another country should be able to follow their alma maters and watch their teams play. So because we're advertiser driven, we provide a free access and free games all the time. We're going to try to deliver to our advertisers the best game possible, as well as the one that's going to generate the biggest audience.
Mr. Ken Trahan, thank you for joining us. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. We truly appreciate having you on the show tonight.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and keep up the great work, and you keep in good company there with George and my buddy VK. So appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing, and we're just here to promote high school sports as you are. And we appreciate what you do, and have a blessed evening here.
Yes, sir. You do too.
Do the same.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
The legend himself, Ken Trahan, gave us a lot of in-depth knowledge about some of the schools here in the New Orleans area. George Peppers, let's talk, you and I, and let's start with that Catholic League.
Let's get it.
What's your thoughts of the Catholic League?
I
Who's
mean,
winning the district?
we've had this mini debate over the last couple of weeks, and we really haven't dug into it. As Ken pointed out astutely, that is a loaded league. There is not a bad team, and look, Holy Cross may bring up the rear, maybe, but that doesn't mean they're a bad football team. That's a team that can win 4, 5 games on the record. But as far as who wins this Catholic League, look, I've told you from the jump, I'm a believer in experience. When you bring the experience that brings back, and that's it, that is a tough nut to crack. And I see the Dolphins 7v7s telling me in the car back to back what? I mean, yeah, they beat Curtis last year. I'm not saying they can't. Let me just say that. Let me stress that to the highest way I can think of. I'm not saying Endicott cannot beat John Curtis, but in a one-game situation with what I see from both squads, Mark's got the goods. They do. There is no question. And that week 10 is going to be a titanic clash in every way. And it probably will be, I don't know, my brother Reggie, calm me nerves there, Reggie. I mean, y'all had that run last year. Slow down. I don't think they're going to factor into the equation. I think they'll, but they're not that team this year. Yeah, and the argument that you can make, Reggie, is this. Oh, well, they got hot. They got hot. They did. And that, look, Jared, how many times have we seen it in high school football, in any level, any class? Teams get hot. It happens. And I see who's been Kerr. Yeah, Carr has been beating Curtis a lot lately. And it wouldn't look, y'all. It wouldn't surprise me if they do it again. It would not surprise me. All I'm saying is that Patriots team, the Superdome was their statement game. What they did to Brother Martin, they goose egged that team. 29-0. And it was not even close. Brother Martin had, I think, 2 first downs in that first half of that game, and I think they finished for like 6. That was the old vintage Curtis. Vintage Curtis may finally have Carr's number, and I love Bryce Brown. Y'all know we know this. Bryce is an outstanding standing coach. I believe JT's got his number this year, Jared, and I'm going to pick the Patriots to win that Catholic League.
Well, I'm going to say this. Coach JT, we had JT on the show right after he won the state championship. And one of the best coaches of all time. A GOAT. A GOAT. And let's just keep it real.
Is he the GOAT, though?
Is he the GOAT of Louisiana? Yeah. Louisiana, yes. And if he breaks the
Nationally.
record, that's for debate too then. Is he the greatest coach ever nationally? But 28 state titles says a lot. And one national championship. But I'm going to say this. Edna Carr gives him fits every year. They've beaten, like DJ said it, they've beaten them a lot lately. JT hasn't figured out the puzzle on how to beat Edna Carr yet. And that talent they have give him fits. And until he can figure it out, I'm sticking with Edna Carr to win the Catholic League. I think St. Aug has a chance, but St. Aug is like this. They're the best team one week, and then boom, they drop down.
They're too hit or miss for me.
Yes, that is
I think
correct.
they're hit or miss, St. Aug.
Yes, totally agree with you. And if St. Aug can stay up here, they can compete with the Edna Carrs and the John Curtises. But I'm sticking with Edna Carr. Yes, New Orleans Dolphins 7-on-7. They beat them on all three phases of the game. We're going to move to District 85A. We thank all y'all for tuning in. I want you all to subscribe to the YouTube page. You see it right there. JB, the sports guy. Subscribe to the page. We do this for high school sports. Want to bring the best of the high school sports to you guys here in this state of Louisiana. George, District 85A, Bonneville, Chalmette, Everett, East Jeff, West Jeff. Not to be disrespectful, but I think it's a two-team race between Everett and Chalmette. Chalmette gives John Everett fits, but John Everett has a transfer quarterback from MLK. It's pretty good. They have Darnell O'Quinn, the wide receiver from Helen Cox. He's over there now.
Yep.
He's at John Everett. You got Wardell Mack, Amani Cargo at defensive backs. You got Jeremiah Clark from Helen Cox there also. So Everett, to me, has benefited from Helen Cox closing down. When Helen Cox went to high school, I said years ago, that's going to hurt John Everett more than it would hurt West Jeff. And now Helen Cox is closed. It benefits John Everett more than West Jeff. So I like the job Jason Tucker does with Chalmette as the head coach, but once again, he's not getting over the hump of beating John Everett. John Everett repeats as district champions of 8-5-8. What are your thoughts?
Can I speak objectively or biased? Because I'm an Eric grad, but
we're not biased. We're not biased on anything.
I know that. I was just throwing a little facetious question there, but honestly, Chalmette has been Eric's kryptonite, but last year Eric figured him out on the road. That is a tough place to play, Chalmette. That is a tough place to play down there. You know, that crowd feels like it's on top of you. You know, and it's just they're very passionate. Jason Tucker has done a marvelous job there with the Owls, and they probably will be that. You just mentioned all the reasons why John Everett should and will win 8-5A. All those players that have migrated from MLK, from Helen Cox, you know, they have fortified this roster. In a normal year, where if Cox was still open, you know, Everett would have had to answer the biggest question: how do you replace Royal Falco? Now you got a guy that can play, that can be that dude for your team. You know, I just wonder the non-district. I don't know if it's that tough. I mean, let me be honest. Dolphins 7v7. I mean, Falco, for all his athleticism, it seemed like he was more me than we. Instances in games. You know, that guy was a talented player, and he felt like he had to do too much. It's like, dude, slide back. Trust your guys. You got athletes, you got talent, but it seemed like Royal always put too much of an onus on himself. Um, Everett this year, when you look at the schedule, they go to Covington in week 1. That's going to be a tough matchup because the Lions, again, Ken talked about the North Shore, and that's a wide open league. Yes, Slidell won it last year. Covington probably will be one of those teams that factors in somewhere. Week 2, come on, Destrehan. I mean, that is the alpha dog in the state of Louisiana. They are the defending 5A state, Division One state champions, but you get them at Memphis. So maybe Eric can do something there. Week 3, it's Bogalusa, Booker T. Then you get Easton. I think they'll go, honestly, 8-2 and catch as a top 10 seed. Um, the two losses, though, have to be competitive, Easton, Destrehan, because 8-5A is woeful. It's weak. I mean, West Jeff hasn't figured, if they haven't, like Kenny said, they haven't figured it out with Cyril. And when Hank was there, they couldn't get it fixed. What the heck is going on in Harvey? Higgins, no. They're not in that district. I'm sorry, they fell down.
Yeah.
East Jeff, Bonneville, they're irrelevant. East Jeff had a spell for a little bit, but they've now fallen into the island of irrelevancy. Bonneville, when have they won? So Eric forecasting 8-2. I'd say a top 10 seed in the playoffs. The problem for Eric is they're in the select side of the bracket, which for the life of me, JP, what are you guys doing? You got Orleans and Jefferson in the selects. They shouldn't be there, but they are.
Yeah.
Eric, for a playoff run, maximize, I think quarterfinals, Eric. Could be the best they get. I'm not sure they could beat Curtis or teams like that. I don't think they can. Carr, um, although it'd be interesting matchups, but 8-2, win a couple of playoff games. Just don't get humiliated like you have in the past. 2 years ago they lost 50-0 in a playoff game to Ponchatoula. And yeah, Ponchatoula was really good. But John Ehret doesn't lose games in the playoffs like that. They did 2 years ago. That needs to stop. That
But
needs to stop.
I'll say this. I want to see John Ehret in about 2 or 3 years with all the kids they can get back at their school now since Helen Cox is closed. Because they always have talent, but
Yep.
they got about to get more talent. And Warren Mays is at West Jeff. The quarterback for John Ehret is Eric Chanot. He came from MLK. Eric Chanot. That's the quarterback.
Mhm.
George, let's get to District 948 right quick. I think we can just say this outright. I don't think Booker T. Washington, Kenner Discovery, Riverdale, or the Willow School can match up with De La Salle in that district.
No, De La Salle has alpha dogs. And yes, they do replace talent on the O line. That O line is going to go into a little bit of a transition, but they're still plenty talented. Richardson, the defensive player, who arguably could be the best defensive player in the state of Louisiana. I mean, you can make the argument for BB from Kennedy. What, of course, it is.
The
But
whole
I'm being objective, DJ. But you got a lot of dudes that you could put in that list. But New Orleans wise, I think Richardson is one of the best players in the state per position. I think De La Salle wins that district. And yes, there's some games, the Newman game is, like Kenny said, is going to be interesting. That I think he was dropping a hint of just the way he done that game. I think the ball game when it happens. St. Charles, I think, is on their schedule too. De La Salle. If last year's team could only get you to a quarterfinal and get drilled by Lafayette Christian, I think this team maxes out in that same level again this year. I don't know if they have that progression to go further than where they went last year. I think they'll be plenty good, but I'm not sure, Jared, that they're a team that, when you think about the Dome, they're one of them. They would have to have the perfect bracket to possibly even make it there.
Let's go to District 10-4A. Landry, Higgins, Bell, Chase, Shaw. We know about Noel Ellis being suspended this season. Cliff Harris still at Higgins as the head coach. Stephen Myers at Bell Chase. Hank Tierney at Shaw. Shaw brings back 9 starters on defense. 9. They just had to replace the linebackers. Everybody else is back. Offensively, 8 starters back. But they had to replace the 3 most important positions, skill wise: quarterback, running back,
Mhm.
wide receiver. They got a transfer at wide receiver, a transfer at running back. Shaw's not losing the district. They're going to win it. But I'm telling you,
Mhm.
this team here has the best shot out of any West Bank team, except Edna Carr, West Bank or Jefferson Parish, to get to the
Right.
Superdome. They do. Yes, you got the Carter cousins, Jaquan and Rentre, the Carter cousins.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. They have the best shot, in my opinion, to get to the dome. They are one pass interference call away for on to leading for taking the lead on Charlie's Catholic in the quarterfinals last year. That two officials right there did not throw a flag. Mike Williams got tackled in the corner of the end zone way before the ball got there. No flag was thrown. If the interference doesn't happen, Shaw takes the lead. If they throw the flag with it happening, Shaw is on the 2 yard line, and they're going to punch it in. Shaw lost 27-21 to one of the best teams in the state, which is Sterling's Catholic. They bring all these guys back. They have Mason Wilson starting at quarterback. This was the guy that they were looking at last year to put at quarterback, but it didn't work out. He's the
Mhm.
guy now. Shaw is going to throw a little bit more this year. Okay? They got the receiver that transferred. I cannot think of his name, but I know his first name is Jacob. I can't think of his last name. He just got an offer from the U, Miami. So he must be something special. The running back, I don't know too much about, but I'm hearing a lot of good things about him. If everything could click, where was the game? It was at Charlie's Catholic. It was in Lafayette. That's where that game was at. If everything could click for Shaw, you're looking at a great season for the Arkansas Shaw Eagles going to the Dome. And to me, the matchup I would like to see, Shaw against Lafayette Christian. Jawan Johnson and his crew against Shaw. I think that would be perfect. His name might be Jasper Parker. Yeah. I know it starts with a J. George, your thoughts on District 10-4A right quick?
I mean, it's Shaw's district to lose. I can't fathom a scenario where they lose that district. I mean, no, look, and I mean no disrespect to the programs in there, Belchase, Higgins, and LB Landry, but let's talk about that. Belchase is going to be solid. Higgins, Clifford Harris has been dealt a bum deal, a bum hand. They're the third school. They're the fourth school on the West Bank, and they're cherry picking people. They don't get the talent base that Everett gets or Shaw gets. They don't get those dudes. They get the leftovers. It's like you go to a Thanksgiving buffet and all you're getting is a bone, and they ain't enough meat on the thing. So, and LB Landry, we already know. We talked about Noel being suspended and infractions or not, or whatever you believe. You astutely point out that Shaw has a chance to really. Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the comment. That's why I stopped. And
It's all
I
good.
think you're right, but Jawan's a terrible nightmare. That dude can beat you throwing it and running it. If he was just a guy that can wing it with his feet, I'd be like, if Shaw just spies him, great. But the dude could sit back and throw it. He could throw the football, Jawan Johnson. I'm not saying Shaw can't beat LCA, but if you get him on the carpet in the Superdome, I don't think Landry gives him no battle. No way. Noel's not there. There's too much turbulence. Shaw's going to run slap over that group. Um, but I think Shaw has a chance. But you're talking about Lafayette Christian, St. Thomas More, teams like that in D2. Um, can you beat one of those teams? Because that could be what it takes to knock out one of them to get to New Orleans. I think Shaw's capable. I mean, you mentioned how many defensive players they bring back: nine, eight offensive starters. That's a lot of experience counts. I don't care what any, and you can say what you want to those out there that are going to poo poo the idea that Shaw could get to the dome. I'm not. I'm not going to be one of them. I think Shaw's got a legit chance, Jared. And look, this isn't sucking up to you because you're a Shaw alum. Shaw's got a real opportunity here. They do. Why did Hank come back at the age of 70 to coach at Shaw, where he started? He didn't get there for the scenery. Bet that. I promise you, he's putting together a team, and if it's not this year, maybe next. But this year's team's got a real opportunity in front of them. The schedule sets up great for you guys. You get St. Charles week one, a very tough opponent, physical. The Texas team, I don't know much about. Um, Y'all do play West Jeff. I think y'all should handle West Jeff. I mean, DeCarlo Holmes has got a lot of work in front of him, but Shaw in district, it's good that you're playing. And then you get Karen Crow at the end of the season. Karen Crow is going to be an interesting challenge, and you get that game at Zimmerman, at Shaw.
Yeah.
So make them get on the bus, and that's big.
I'm going to
But
say
I
this.
think the schedule sets up beautifully for y'all.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this in regards to if this matchup happens against Lafayette Christian. Jawan Johnson is special, hands down. And the performance he put in the dome was spectacular. One of the best I've ever
Yep.
seen. And it was a shame they lost that game in the last 2 minutes up by 10 points. Now, with that being said, the DBs at Shaw is a great group. I said this, and I don't want y'all to take it the wrong way like I'm tripping, but listen to what I'm saying. Unit-wise, they've been together. They've been through the trenches last year, and they're back. The DBs, cornerbacks, and safeties. As a unit, as a veteran group, they're one of the best. Totally. They're one of the best. Lewis Foster, the safety, he's getting a lot of offers, okay? He's not your big-time 5-star, 4-star, maybe even 3-star, but he's getting looked at by a lot of schools. He's got over 6 offers. I know Marshall, ULL, they've all offered him. As a unit, they're great. And then let's talk about their defensive ends. You got Jaden Scott and you got Sheldon. I can't think of his last name. Jaden Scott going to Tulane. Sheldon Scott, who's a junior, is going to get some big offers. You got Mississippi State, Texas Tech already looking at him. So they have studs everywhere. And then you subbing in Rontre Carter and Jaquan Carter. Rontre, as an 8th grader, you can say he might have been the best DB on the field when he came on the field. I'm telling you, this group can be something special since the 06 and 07 defenses Shaw had that set records. Just saying. I'm thinking this is going to be a great year for Shaw, and if they get to the dome, watch out. The whole West Bank will show up. I want to move on right quick to District 11-4A. I'm asking you, does McDonough 35 and George Washington Carver has a shot to win the district over Warren Easton?
Fair answer is no, but that's not to poo poo back their outstanding programs. Frank Daggs has done terrific work at 35, and we talked to him last year in the dome, and that was the post Marcus Scott celebration when Destry Hank was on the field
Let me stop you one.
with us.
Let me stop you 1 second, George. 1 second. Let's go back. Coach Mo, what school did you play for when Shaw beat you in 07? Go ahead, George.
Okay. Anyway, but I don't think Warren Easton is the team to beat. They are the quintessential hot favorite. They should be the team that wins that district. I do think 35 can be competitive. I'm just not sure they got enough studs on both sides of the ball that can match up Easton. Carver, that's a team that's fearless. They fear nothing or no one. George Washington Carver's a team that can get at it, and they're not afraid. They're not afraid to play tough. Play tough teams. So that could be an interesting entity. But at the end of the day, Jared, I think it's the Eagles and Warren Easton going a long, long way in that district, winning it. and setting themselves up for a potential run at a state title.
Okay, I got a couple things to say first because these guys and our visitors, our viewers, they're going off. Coach Mo, I was at that playoff game. My brother played for Shaw. That's Chad Boyd. Chad got hurt in the third quarter with his neck, but the game was already over. Chad had to stick Lionel Bro. When I tell you, Lionel Bro did not have a catch in the first half. And I got the video to this day. To me, that's the game that put Chad Boyd on the map. Defending Lionel Bro. To me, in my opinion, that year, not D'Angelo Benton, Lionel Bro was the best receiver in the state. Just the fact that he wasn't 6'3" like D'Angelo Benton. But Lionel Bro, man, you talk about a monster. Yes.
Get it?
Now, I saw something else. Yeah, Coach Mo, I saw, Daniel Bourne. Daniel Bourne was on that team. Yep. Oh, he was the QB, Coach Mo. Okay, all right. I know who you are now. I know exactly who you are. Now, Coach Mo, you said something about Easton. I've heard this rumor, but me and my co-host, we said we're not going to talk about it until it comes out, until it's legit. So I know a lot of coaches have heard, and they said it's supposed to be true. Us on the show, we not saying a word until that is legitimately out. So now, I think Warren Easton wins the district unless, that rumor becomes true.
Yeah, exactly.
So it comes out. But look, that game last year, Leo, they said it for real? Did the Warren Easton coaches say that, Leo? You let me know. But the game last year between 35 and Warren Easton, classic. Easton had to come back and win that game down by double digits.
They were down big.
Wow, Leo.
And they stormed their way back. But does 35 have that dude that can equalize Warren Easton? Warren Easton's got Frederick Robinson, and that kid Fred Robinson, and he is just heck on wheels. Dude's got jets for days. Does 35 have dudes that can do something with him?
I'm going to say this because I know they got Fat as their wide receiver, and Santana Price is back. But also, Wallace Foster is back. And I'm sure Wallace Foster is going to go wherever Fat goes. He's going to be the glove on him. So that could take away that. Santana Price might have to escape the pocket and do things on his feet and find other receivers to step up and help them in this game this year. Yeah, you gotta stop Fred Robinson, but Fred likes to bounce stuff to the outside a lot. So if you can contain the inside and prevent him from bouncing, you can get Fred Robinson. But with that being said, I think Warren Easton wins the district. Leo says Warren Easton coaches have said it. I'm still going to be like, okay, I'm waiting for the word. I'm not doubting my good friend Leo, but I'm waiting for the word. But I'm going to Warren Easton to win that district. District 9 3A, George, is it Kennedy's to lose?
Probably so. Linares Outpage has done an outstanding job there, and love the guy. I mean, loved him when he was a high school player at Carver. Was a heck of a quarterback at Carver. Went to Tulane, and wow, unfiltered commentary. Oh, I see it. I hear you, DJ. Kill the language, baby, but that's all good. But Linares has done outstanding work at Kennedy, and I think Kenny brought up something interesting in the interview about Kennedy. That when they went back to the name, it does something for a school when you have your origins representing itself again. It was, I forget the name they were, New Area Tech. What the heck were they? Lake Area. It's like, really? Whose bright idea was that? Let's get back to the origins. And they did. And now they've reaped the benefits. I think it's Kennedy's district to lose. BB is a stud on the defensive backfield. They're going to score points. They will score. That's an offense that can score a lot. And Kennedy had a little bump in the playoffs last year that I think they can channel that and really progress forward. Where are they in relation to a state championship? Don't think they're that quite that team. I do think they'll push into things, potentially push into Thanksgiving week.
Ooh,
Excuse me, and play Thanksgiving week. They have a chance at it, again. But let's see what Linares does for an encore from last year.
look, Linares broke records last year. First 10-win season, I believe. Well, they went 9-1. They did win 10 games in the playoffs. First playoff
Yeah,
victory.
because they got a
Yeah,
playoff
first
win.
district championship. And they got to the quarterfinals Thanksgiving week against Edie White. That offense gave them fits. Um,
Hmm.
Last year it was Chris Armstrong in the toys. This year it's Amani Darrensburg in the toys. You got Baby Joe to you know, name him out of all the receivers that they have. They got toys for days at wide receiver. They're gonna be spreading the ball left and right. Um, can they replace the Sean Baptiste? Do they have somebody at the end, at defensive end, that can be that same or close disruptor, be a close disruptor like he was? Just be as close, because Deshaun Baptiste was just unbelievable. They need somebody at defensive end. Other than that, you got BB at cornerback. To me, in my opinion, the best cornerback in the state. He can play the zone. He can play man. He can play press coverage. BB is that guy. I think they win the district again. I don't think they get to the state, but it's possible. Depending on the matchups, they can once again get to the quarterfinals. New Orleans Dolphins, he's saying, no, sir. I know that that's to me, he's talking about BB or something else. But if he disagrees with me about BB, it's all good. It's all good. And, we love it. That's sports, baby. Sports talk. All it is. I want to get to the last one we can talk about right now before we go, George. District 10-2A with Newman, St. Charles Catholic, Metairie Park Country Day, and ML King. Like we said earlier, Joe Riley's done a great job with ML King Charter, and he got into the playoffs last year, got a playoff win, and just the kind of mess he went through last year, trying to host a playoff game where he couldn't even host a playoff game, had to come to the West Bank, and Thomas Jefferson got to host and kept the gate money. I just thought it was ridiculous. They should have let MLK host that game last year at West Jeff still, through all the controversy of them trying to host a game and all these other teams get to pick first, and they couldn't get that. And even Little League team had Joe Brown locked up to use, wouldn't even move their dates back to give Joe Riley the Thursday night game. Unbelievable, man. That to me was just bad, and they beat the brakes off of Thomas Jefferson. Joe Riley's done a great job, but get to my question: does St. Charles repeat as district champions?
Um, I would say is this a trick question, but it's not. Um, I mean, because you're talking about the two-time state
Yep.
champions, reigning state champions, and Wayne Stein has done wonders. Taking over for an icon in Frank Monica, hasn't missed a beat, has
No,
he?
not in
Um,
football, not in baseball. No.
Newman isn't. No, and yeah, baseball just did they win state? Yeah, they did win
Yes.
state, and he decided to give up the baseball program to focus on football. That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know. The man's focusing solely on football. That's telling you one thing: them dudes are ready to make another run to get to New Orleans. And if last year was any indication, they were left for dead in the fourth quarter against
Dunham.
Dunham. And the Dunham is a very good program. Neil Weiner does great work there. Great coach. Has won everywhere. Um, I think St. Charles wins the district. I think Newman, look, and Kenny said it right. Newman's going to be fine. I mean, yeah, the spectra of the Mannings is gone, so they're not going to have the Deuce and ESPN and all them people coming in to watch games and cherry pick a game to want to put to broadcast. And like, hey man, and let's be honest, the games that they had Art on were against teams that he was supposed to beat.
Yeah.
Cosmetic. Let's be honest. I mean, look what happened when he ran into teams that can play defense.
Manning. Yeah.
Trouble. And I'm not saying Arch is. I'm not saying Arch is a bad quarterback. He's not, but I thought the spectrum of him being that dude was a little bit too exaggerated for me. And what's being proven? Look at the fall practice at Texas. Quinn Ewers is the dog right now, and Arch hasn't penetrated that
Right.
yet. And I don't know if that's by design, but they didn't get Arch to be the second stringer. They thought they were getting that guy, but St. Charles wins the district. To answer that question, it's pretty easy. Um, the other teams there, MLK Charters has done good. You mentioned the fallacy that happened last year. Country Day, Cheddar is a good coach. They're going to maintain themselves. They'll be fine, but nobody's beating the Comets. I think the Comets. There's a reason why Wayne Stein resigned as baseball coach to focus on football. That's not to win district. It's to be in New Orleans and go for the three-peat.
I'll say this. I'm going with St. Charles Catholic also, but I wouldn't be surprised if Newman does win it. I just want to see Eli Friend, the quarterback for Newman, how he
Hmm.
handles the pressure of a D line coming at him. Can he stand in that pocket and make a throw? He looked wonderful in 7-on-7. Like, accuracy was nice, on the money. But now, when you got a blitz coming, D tackles, defensive ends coming at you, are you accurate then? I have to see that. And I think Newman's going to win some good non-conference games. I think they're going to be Hornville at Newman and whoever else they play. But
De La Salle.
who?
De La Salle.
De La Salle? No, not this year. No, I don't think so. But other than that,
Yeah, I think they lose that game
yeah.
too.
But other than that, we'll see. We'll see. Everybody that tuned in, I thank y'all. Please go subscribe to my YouTube page, JB the Sports Guy. We thank everybody for tuning in. Guys, we are back next Tuesday. Well, Tuesday coming, August 8th. We are back. And we're going to be joined by Joseph Holmes, sports writer on the North Shore. We'll talk about the North Shore teams that day. August 9th, we're joined by a legend who works for the Advocate in Baton Rouge. That's Robin Fambro. We will talk about all the Baton Rouge area schools. That's the Zachary, the Catholic, that's Springs, who's up and coming. These Baton Rouge schools, ULAB,
Dunham.
all these Dunham. We're going to talk about all these schools in Baton Rouge. And then August 10th, and this is a question Leo had earlier. August 10th, we have Nick Campbell of the lsufootball out there in St. John Parish. He's coming on here to talk about all the River Parish teams. Hornville, Destrehan, St. Charles Catholic, Lutcher, St. James, West St. John, Riverside. I know that's like two others I'm not remembering right now, but boom, we will be right here. August 8th, Joseph Holmes, North Shore. August 9th, Robin Fambro, Baton Rouge. And August 10th, Nick Campbell with all the St. Charles, not St. Charles, all the River Parish School. And these guys, they talking, man. They talking, taking over the show. I love it. This is great. They talk about De La Salle being good again. Yes, indeed. I love it. But guys, thank y'all for tuning in. Subscribe to the YouTube page, JB the Sports Guy. Come back here August 8th at 8 o'clock. August 8th at 8 o'clock. Tuesday. We are back. GP, you got any last words?
Just for whatever you do this weekend, be safe. And if you expected us to talk Hall of Fame game, sorry about your luck. Ain't happening. Um, but thank y'all. Look, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for joining us. And we thank Ken Trahan, the legend. And we hope you got a lot of infinite wisdom and got a lot of knowledge from this interview tonight. Look, and that's not to shortchange any of our other guests during this month of previews. Oh wow, they getting some props. Look at that, Dolphins 737's getting some shine on our expense. JP, what's up? I hear you. It's all good though. It's all good, and all I know is we're one day closer to prep football. We are one day closer. Every day that counts down, we get closer, and we're sitting on something that we may announce here in the next couple of weeks. And when we do, It's going to shake the landscape as far as prep coverage. It's going to shake the landscape. Just stay tuned. Stay tuned. It's an idea that we've birthed, and we're trying to naturalize it to fruition. So we'll see. But whatever you, what do we have this weekend? Jake Paul, Nate Diaz. You can have it. Um, I mean, nothing. I mean, the Women's
And
World Cup
yeah,
team that has been disappointing. Oh, that scrimmage. That'll be an interesting scrimmage. And the
yeah,
car
yeah.
East St. John. That game is that at Keller? I
Is
think
it
it
at
is.
is it at Joe Keller or is it at Berman? New
I'm
Orleans
not
got
for sure, but the way he's got it written, it sounds like East St. John is the home team.
That's
That'll
what it
be an
looked.
interesting scrimmage and see where Brandon Brown is with that group.
Yeah,
Look, there's so much more to do next week. We
big
have
time.
been hitting this. We have been hitting this hard, trying to get you guys ready for this prep season, and it's gonna be fun. And we love it. We do it because we care, and we do it because we know there's an audience and there's a market for you guys. And we thank y'all for all the comments. And look, to the man that said, that's Georgia school, you doggone right. Doggone right. I went 4 years to John Ehret. I owe that school. Doggone right. Quit tripping, my boy. And Reggie, if you think Brother Martin's got a shot at the Catholic League um, dinner bet that they don't finish third, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you one prediction before we go. Curtis Carr are going to be the top two teams, whatever order. You know who's going to be the third place team this year?
Who you got?
Rummel.
You say
Rummel.
I'm saying Og.
It
You say
should
Rummel.
be, but if they got a match, if all can't beat Rummel, and that
Yeah,
was with Jay.
yeah.
But I don't know, brother. I mean, when you have elongated failures against a team, that could be
Tell you what.
problem. And no hate on VK,
Nah, but tell you what
but
though.
he'd probably be the one to tell. He'd probably be the one to be like, "Listen, George. Listen, George. You know how he does when he combats an argument.
Look,
It's all in fun." But
I'll say this, we'll get out of here. I'll say this. A lot of people. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You kind of got buffered a little bit.
I'll say this. District. Kobe Young. How would they?
Yes, sir.
How well can his offense be under new leadership in Scott Watney? That's the question. Can Scott Watney bring his alma mater, his team, back up to relevancy? That's the job he has to do, and we'll see. We'll see.
Look what did it. Look what he did at Hannon.
Oh yeah,
Look what did it. He did at Hannon.
yeah.
I mean, they
Undefeated
got
team.
to a state title, but they got waxed. Didn't they get waxed by Calvary? I think a couple of years
I
ago.
think so.
I mean, yeah, they got beat down pretty good. But Scott wins everywhere he's gone, and now he's going to try to bring that same modium of success to Holy Cross. Will it reflect this year? No, because look how tough that league is. Where do you find a win? You know,
True. That's true.
and you're going to have to cherry pick somewhere. But thank you for all of y'all to join us tonight, Jared. Take us home.
Definitely. Coach Mo, appreciate it. I'll tell Chad, New Orleans Dolphins, that Coach Ace, I got you. I sure will tell him. I'll text him. I'll text him right
Oh, look at
now
that.
before so I won't forget. I'll text him. But let me see. Yeah, I got it. I got you. But everybody, thank y'all
All
so
right,
much.
Reggie, I hear you.
Tell Coach Ace to let Chad coach his son. Yeah, bring him to Shaw. Gotta bring him to Shaw for that to happen. Chad coaches that Shaw, the DBs. Bring him to Shaw. But look, guys, I'm gonna text him Chad in a minute. But thank y'all, everybody that tuned in. Thank y'all so much. Man, guys, our special guest. I want to thank him so much, man. It was such an honor having him on this show. For my good friend George Peppers, appreciate you so much. Yo,
Same
VK is
here.
back next week. We got VK back next week with us. Okay, he's going through a little something, but what he went through was great because he won it. He won. All right. If you want to tell the news next week, we'll let VK tell the news. We're not gonna, talk
We're
his
not going to
business, but
spoil that.
right. But he won something important, and we can get VK back here next week. But thank y'all. Tuesday, August 8th, 8 o'clock. Come on back, everybody. We appreciate y'all. We are out. Y'all take care.